and greetings to everyone who's out there in internet land. Many of you may know me already, some of you may not. I am Commander Yannick, and a good evening, a good morning or good night, depending on where you may be in the world. Now, here we are, in Elite Dangerous, in the Sol System, the home of humanity, that we're all pretty familiar with, I would have thought. This is an interesting little station that I'm floating next to. This is in orbit of Pluto, which is over here on the right hand side. So it's a pretty interesting looking place. I mean, the idea of tonight's stream is pretty much just to fly around and have some fun and you know, see some interesting places within Elite, which is a massive place. Being a sort of one-to-one scale galaxy, that's not really a shock, is it? But here we are. Flying in the old Imperial Courier. This is pretty much just a fighter, really, or a large fighter, if you want to call it that. Ooh, someone's trying to scare me. How awful. In this particular station, I think it's supposed to be some kind of traffic control. Ooh, I'm a trespasser. I think I will leave. No, I'm not wanted. Okay, cool. Can everyone hear and see the game okay at the moment? Say anything if you can. Ha, awesome. Thank you, Zero Access. Good to see you as well. Thank you for everyone who's come to this. This is really my first stream, actually, in any serious sense. I did a test the other day, and that went quite well. Yeah, the Courier's a nice little ship, isn't it? It's just so much fun. I mean, you get a good range out of it as well. And it's wonderful for boosting. I mean, it's a good sort of balance, I suppose, between sort of taking equipment with you and having a fighter. So, as I was saying a second ago about sort of being a large fighter. And it's not going to be as quick as like in Imperial Eagle or something, but fully modded out. But it's fast enough. Get good boost speed out of it. Well, that's good to see. I suppose with these streams, one thing you worry about in advance is obviously, you know, the frame rate, the quality of it. Will anyone be able to see and hear what the hell you're doing? This is one of those weird things. I was never actually completely ignorant about this whole business. It's just I didn't really have a machine that was capable of streaming until pretty recently, and so my early experiments were not very good. But this one seems to have worked out quite well. I'm crossing my fingers when I say that. But still, for this evening, what I'm going to do is be visiting one of the old INRA bases, well within the bubble, in the inhabited sphere of human space, known as the bubble. For those of you who aren't up on the lore, the INRA was the sort of a conglomeration, a sort of joint venture really, between the Empire and the Federation, the biggest sort of factions, if you were, of the Elite universe. And it was created to fight off the Thargoids. Except for, like, a lot of these sort of semi-secret organisations, it ended up taking up sort of a life of its own and becoming kind of dangerous in a way, not just to the Thargoids, but also to the Empire and the Federation. But there's some interesting sort of old bases there, which were like research centres for Thargoid tissue and the like, and various sort of mycoid bioweapons essentially against them. from what I understood, the mycoid is supposed to be some kind of fungus that attacked the technology and possibly even the living tissue of Thargoids. Now that's a really, really old piece of Elite lore. I mean, going back to like the third game in the mid-90s. So yeah, it's just to see it actually in Elite now is really, really cool. But yeah, I'll be swapping out my ship at Founders World, and I'll be taking a trip to these INRA sites, at least one of them anyway. We'll see how we're doing for time, but yeah, that's the objective for tonight, just have some fun, look around the old INRA base and see what happens really. At the moment, anyone who's interested, I am in FleetCom, private group, so if people want to sort of follow me and turn up at the sites as well, then that's absolutely fine. I'll let you know when we get there where I am, the details. And here we are. This is Jameson Memorial in front of the Founders World Station. It's really accessible only by anyone who has an elite rank or anyone who bought into the early Kickstarters. I think the lifetime pass holders as well, if I'm correct. I'm recount myself on the chat on the system. For some reason it's not being nice to me. Silly chat box. No, absolutely. The Courier is, you know, one of the best canyon running ships out there. I think anything that small and manoeuvrable is bound to be fun. Just flying around, especially in canyons. Quite nice lines though. It's quite a well designed ship, but then again I think most Imperial ships do tend to have quite sort of pleasing looks to them. I mean obviously you've got one as far as the Imperial cutter is like, you know, very big but very elegant looking ship. The Clipper maybe not as much, but it still isn't bad. Then again, isn't the Imperial cutter just really sort of a symbol of a sort of, you know, space bourgeoisie, you know, look how much money I have and power I have. But to be fair, I think most people who've been playing the game for a while usually end up having that or the Federal Corvette, or both, once you've got the rank for them. And the whole thing with those ships, so they're not cheap to run or not cheap to buy. 500 million credits sunk into this. Great mining ships though. Still trying to get the chat to work on my phone and it isn't for some bizarre reason. Well, at least the main thing is still working. Greetings to anyone who's just joined us. The overlay you see on the right hand side of the screen is actually only supposed to be like a placeholder one. I haven't really got a sort of proper one yet. I'm working on that. So it's in the early days yet with all this. The intention for these sort of streams is like not just tonight but just generally is to obviously, you know, do some running in the upcoming alpha for the Odyssey update. And that's a big thing obviously for anyone who's interested in Elite. And you know, it's a good time to be doing this because obviously people who haven't bought the update will want to know about it. and just to see what the hell's going on, you know. So it seemed like a good time to start sort of streaming would be about now. Like all these previous expeditions that I've done, usually someone ended up being the official streamer, usually Helium-7, but other people have done the job as well at different times. Just because my machine just couldn't like do all the various things and stream at the same time, but yeah, but here we are. Yeah, I'm going to switch ships to my crate. And this is Orion's Chariot. This one, actually for me, is fairly unusual. Not because anything to do with the ship per se, but it's the only one I've actually used over more than one expedition. Apart from very short ones, but 2 long ones. This was used over the Orion expedition, hence Orion's Chariot. And the more recent expedition, Mercury's Wings. So for me personally, it's a ship with a little bit of history to it. Yeah, that's right, Zero Axis. It's I think most people, well, a lot of people I know are looking forward to the alpha update, and yeah, I mean obviously there's a debate about whether it's truly an alpha or beta, but those terms seem to be used almost interchangeably these days, as in something that's not quite finished, but you know, is mostly functional. But yeah, I mean to be fair, a few months ago I wasn't half as excited as I am now. It's just sort of come along fairly recently. I mean, that was the idea of having, you know, space legs and like thin atmospheric worlds. Those are good things enough, but it's just, I think the fact that we've actually seen a good amount of footage, yeah, to actually whet our appetites a bit. So that's important. This is always the thing about having an explorer ship in the bubble. No distance is particularly long. In this case, I've got about 70, 71 light year jump range. It's only about, like, was previously 65, but then the new, you know, the custom Class 5 FSD that they're actually offering recently to do, you know, ones that CG turned into reality. So I got one of those and thought I'd just put it here. You know, seems the best place for it. And this is pretty much my go-to explorer these days. I mean, being a crate factor is kind of obvious as to why. For anyone who's not so au fait with crates, it is pretty much the primary, or if not one of the main, exploration ships of choice, I think, these days. That really and the Anaconda seem to be the most common choices, just because of their sheer jump range, I think, and the fact that you can take quite a lot of equipment in both without really worrying too much. I mean, it's largely replaced as an explorer the Aspen Explorer for most people. And I say that with a certain sadness because I really like the Aspen. I've still got one. I've still got a couple actually. And they're really good ships, and they're still perfectly viable explorers. They're still cheaper to buy than Crate Phantom or the Crate Mark II Phantom. Yeah, so they're definitely still viable explorer ships. Just you're not seeing as many of them out there these days as you once did, you know. Apparently, we're looking for the station, so the ground facility on A3. That would be A3. Just looking at the canon description of it, because I think I may have been to this, but not in my main account. One of my alt accounts, probably. One of those two. Yeah. A3A. Cool. Alright, here we go. these days, instead of using a gamepad for controls, I mean, do have joysticks and whatnot. Use the dual stick approach for quite a long time, but I've still got the dual sticks, but that's on my sort of backup secondary computer. I still get some use. But it's all good though. I think about gamepads, they are pretty robust, really. They seem to, like, yeah, fingers crossed, they seem to break less than joysticks, or go wrong less than joysticks do. Obviously, it depends which joystick you've bought, then, you know. Some are very robust, but some just aren't. Okay. Right. Approaching Con A3A. Interestingly named. I'm going to assume this facility will reveal itself to us as you scan the planet. So it looks like quite typical sort of ice world, really. It's pretty though. Okay, let's have a look. It's always interesting seeing the commander names in these various places. Who discovered them? 6 apparently. Cool. All the pretty colours. Yeah, this is the pretty much standard use of the Discovery, the, shall we say, the detailed scanner. They probably didn't need to use as many probes, but yeah, 6 would do it. Yeah, that's cool. Hasn't revealed itself to us just yet. Maybe it will. But if not, I'm going to have to navigate the old-fashioned way. Which could be fun. You never know. Right, the place is called Alameda Landing. The Canon research piece on it says abandoned settlement facility was found by an unregistered comms beacon. It could be found on Terra Garden Star 2. Transmit at 45 minutes past the hour. Secure 9, 14, 8 when risky move drive tech ... Obviously part of a bigger comm sequence, that one. That was obviously part of the way it was found. Like a lot of these sort of mysteries, there was sort of like a bit of a scavenger hunt, a bit of a clue here, a bit of a clue there. You know, the usual trail of breadcrumbs to try and put together the location of these places. But yeah, sometimes they do just reveal themselves to us on the scan, though not always immediately. Doesn't appear to be, so I may have to do it the old-fashioned way. Just bear with me a second. Bringing out the wonderful ED bearing. The great friend of explorers everywhere. Okay, bear with me while I enter the coordinates into this. I mean, there is obviously versions of this, similar things with like compass functions based into ED Discovery and similar, but I'm not running that just this second. I've not actually tried it running with the stream at the same time. Still. Yeah, say if anyone wants to join me in game, I am in FleetCom at the Con CONN system, which is quite near Sol actually. Hello Gio, and welcome to the chat. Yeah, we've just because you've just joined, I'm looking for this old abandoned sort of military research base, which was used for some quite dubious things back in the day in the lore of Elite, which I'm about to fly down to it once I've actually got all my bearings straight. It's always that thing when you're exploring by yourself. It's just like, you know, you can do all these things in seconds because you're all sort of drilled up to it, but while having to sort of stream and talk at the same time. Having said that, I do that on expeditions, so I probably shouldn't complain. Yeah, but then again, on expeditions I usually know what I'm doing probably at least a month in advance. So yeah, I've got to laugh really. Yeah, it's all these subtleties about sort of streaming as well. Like the chat isn't always in the right place, and it's early days though. I'll get better at this as time goes by. I think the talky bit I do fairly well. It's all the other sort of bits and pieces, but that'll come. Right. We don't have any coordinates because we're not close enough yet. Ha 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 ha. I should pay closer attention. To be thinking about lore and not about where I am and what I'm doing. Okay. Let's drop down. Okay, Geo, this is an ice world ASA looking for a military research station on. I do have the coordinates of it, but there we have it. It's a very good looking kind of place with all this sort of ancient lava flows in the red against the sort of whitey blue kind of ice. Many worlds like this in Elite, but each one has a slightly different texture, slightly different coloration. Apparently the new update is going to make these things even more varied and probably more realistic as well, including mountain ranges, canyons, old lava flows, etc. Craters. Apparently I think all these things are going to be remodeled in one way or the other. The exact details obviously part of the surprise, but and that's why I'm crossing my fingers that worst case the update, even if it's not quite as much as I would have hoped, will at least be very good in certain areas, so it'll at least give us sort of as a community something to go at, which is it very probably will. But then again, there's always going to be areas of the game in an update that we wouldn't have anticipated, for good or for ill. But even the bad bits can sometimes be played into interesting game mechanics. And the community are very inventive, obviously, at that, in playing game mechanics into, you know, amusing things, events, you know, or, you know, even fiction sometimes. You know, there's some good writers out there. There's some very good publications, actually. Not just, actual sort of written publications, magazines and what have you, audio magazines, podcasts. The Elite media is actually really good, you know. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate to make the point or anything, but it is actually genuinely better than a lot of actual professional media in the world. Actually, I don't think that's an exaggeration, to be honest, because it doesn't tell as many lies. I know some people do in character sort of, you know, things that are sort of deliberately telling a certain narrative and what have you, but yeah. It's cool though. It's all very cool. Right. My present coordinates. Well, that's it. Chatting's always one of the point. It's yeah. It depends on who's in the chat, isn't it? What they're saying. If people are talking crap, then ignore the chat. But I wouldn't ignore the chat. As a streamer, it's probably a good idea not to ignore your chat. Yeah. No, you're right, Swanky. And the alpha server will almost certainly crash at least once, have a major outage on the first day, because it's tradition, you know. It definitely will. I mean, I'm not expecting anything amazing. I'm trying to I will attempt to cover the first day, if I can, on the stream. If I can't, it'll be totally understandable. Everyone will be understanding about that. That first day is always going to be the most difficult one, because you could be like, half an hour into a stream, the whole thing would just completely cave in and crash, which I'm half expecting actually. But it would be nice to get like a few insights and then like say, okay, well we'll do it tomorrow, which is probably going to be the thing. Day 2 will be the first one that will, where the gold will probably start to flow in. Okay. Let us go with the flow. I was saying to the others earlier, Gio, this is like very old school sort of in-game navigation, trying to sort of plot your way down to a set of coordinates. It's always easier if some other guy or girl is there to start with and can like wing you in, give you a little beacon that basically brings you down to the location. Oh, now I can see it. Now it appears, yeah. Doing all that calculation and now it's already just appeared. This is the thing, sometimes they appear instantly once you scan, sometimes it takes a little while, and now it's appeared on sensors, so yeah. Here we go. Need a landing, here we go. It's on the dark side by the looks, all near the terminator line between day and night. Yeah. I mean, in many ways, actually doing the streaming is pretty similar to a lot of the sort of expedition stuff, as then I end up just like talking for a lot of the time, except the difference is that I talk all the time on this. There's only like a certain portion of the time I'm talking in an expedition, because unsurprisingly, everyone else rightfully has their own sort of thing they need to say, and it's all part of the fun, and I love it, I really do. Well, that's what makes it all good. But yeah, here we are. Need a landing, the old INRA base. This is going to be interesting, because obviously it's going to be in darkness, and I'm going to have to either go by the lights of the SRV in the ship and night vision as well. I mean, night vision is useful in illuminating most things in front of you, but it's only things in front of you, and the range is obviously fairly limited. It's more widespread, of course, than your floodlights. Right, here we descend to the planet. Now this will be interesting in the alpha test, how this bit, the glide, will be different through atmospheres, because obviously we're all expecting it's going to be pretty similar with this similar kind of sequence, with probably a few flames ahead of you or something, as spacecraft go through an atmosphere. I mean, very disappointing if it wasn't, wouldn't it? There's got to be at least some kind of plasma in front of you, some kind of green or orange sort of flames, or sort of like going around the front of the spacecraft. Generally looking cool, here we are. Haha, rough landings. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah. I do think a lot of the time that people do watch streams to see people cock up to some degree, and it inevitably does happen at some stage. Especially how we find you pushing the envelope, because obviously you're sort of sometimes distracted by other things that are going on. But yeah, it has its own amusements, definitely. Interesting also point, Swanky, you're saying about the hitting certain angles that you're burning up. Obviously that's sort of more reflective of real life. And that would be interesting, because at the moment we've got to hit certain angles anyway. If we've gone beyond a certain, a certain angle, then the whole thing just cuts out and stops you from doing that. But it would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? I think I have to land slightly further away. Or can I land near the side? I probably can, actually. It is a bit flatter near. Tell me how the frame rate is, guys, because it's slightly more jerky or slower in game at the moment than I'd anticipate, probably because of the sort of night vision effect. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, just also what we're doing at the moment. This is an obvious other point about the alpha update. Is this, you've seen the frontier footage, and there's obviously probably part of the autopilot will now auto land you instead of having to find the sweet spot for your ship and then land the thing. So yeah, it'll make life a little bit easier. I suppose if also thinking about the way around, it could be a moment of vulnerability too. Let's say you've got an SDC or a sort of ganker, people who want to destroy you basically, from the skies. If you were in autopilot, you'd be quite vulnerable for those seconds. So I suppose if you're in an expedition in the middle of nowhere, it's fine. But if you're like in open, in the bubble, it might be a vulnerable spot. Okay. Let us go investigate. Deploying the SRV. The SRV is one of Elite's quirkiest features, I would say. Because obviously it's a rover, it's a buggy. It is your wheeled transport across the surface of these worlds. But at the same time, why is its front forks infinitely stronger than the rest of it? I mean, why are the front wheels virtually indestructible if you land on them, but if you land on the rear ones, you'll almost certainly die or at least wreck your hull in need of repair? That bit has always amused me greatly. I mean, outside the front forks, you know, the SRV it's like tinfoil, isn't it? It really is. I mean, you can repair it as you go, but if you fall off a mountain, sometimes that's not possible. You can repair it as you go, sure, but that doesn't always mean it's going to work. That's cool. I mean, I think with the streams, I think most people understand, especially the more complicated games and the way the internet is, the frame rate does vary a certain amount. So depending on your local internet work sort of connections. And even where you are in the world, actually, not just local as in like bits of Europe or what have you, but in internet terms. Yeah. Okay, here we are at the INRA base, and we've got some materials. Just scattered, like casually allowing around as they do. But all of these abandoned facilities, it always looks like someone left in a hurry, because they probably did. Oh yeah, there's yeah, it looks like there's a comlink up there. We'll scan the comlink and have a look. What do they have to say? Scanning communications. Link. I think as with all of these sites, of course, you've got these these logs, and it will, usually give you the part of a story, a narrative as to what has happened at this particular location. And a lot of them are very good. I'll play some of them now because not everyone's heard them all, and each location has like different ones. With some of it's got really good voice acting, so I will definitely play that. That's part 3 of 6 actually. Let's get the other ones before we play the sequence, because that make a lot more sense that way rather than disjointed and out of sequence story. So I'll go around the rest of the base first, and we'll come back to that in a bit. Yeah, cool. Yeah, you look at these sort of. I reckon these are big tanks. These are the old mycoid tanks, where the. Some people say the mic was a virus, some people say it's a fungus, depending on which actual story you read. More popularly referred to as a virus, I think. One that would destroy certain plastics. And they're ones that the Thargoids had, and therefore disabling their technology. But then they obviously counter with scavengers, which are obviously the little sort of drones that fly around disinfecting places that have been. It's like a bioweapon, isn't it? It really is. It's enough sort of a big scale bioweapon, the mycoid. Right, let's have a look. I have to use the turret for that one, so. Okay. Drive a bit closer, I think. Another piece of the puzzle, I think. Interesting, the sounds in the background. One thing that this game has always done very well, and that's sound effects. At the settlement lot. Going a bit too far back. How much can you guys hear of the sort of small sound effects of the installation in the background? Another you see there's these bits here, these cargo cases that look like they were abandoned in a hurry. But this is the base that have been obviously wrecked. It was probably doesn't look like a Thargoid attack because there's none of those sort of green spots that you tend to find. If it is a Thargoid. I've already got that one. Little sparks there that fly. Yeah, no, Gio, that's a pretty good balance actually. I was wondering how it balances itself out. I mean, I think the sound levels in the game itself are pretty balanced, as in you can... None of the sounds are really overpowering, but at the same time you can hear them very well. Crystal shards. Yep, I'll have some of that. I think it's always best to pick up materials wherever you go because they're very useful for engineering things. Especially ships. I don't think for the update we're going to be able to engineer suits, even though if we can make some kind of off-the-shelf updates with them. There's always a sense of loneliness in these other places as well, because you can see all the little details, you know, like the sort of comms relays, signs of human habitation. Like this is the entrance to the settlement. It's not like a Wild West town. There's always, I think, a deliberate sort of part of that where you've got this sort of sign that says wherever we are. Like here we are. INRA, keep clear. Intergalactic Naval Research. Probably there's 6 of these, so there's a few more to go, but it should be fine. Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad one to get for materials chemical processing. You always trade them later if you need to. Now this is where it gets very interesting. See these are tanks. Look like they were filled with the mycoid virus. Probably a liquid. See where they sort of spilled over. A sort of yellowy, sort of brown almost. And there's the there's the connector to a smaller sort of, I don't know, processor or something. And there's a whole sort of tanks of it in the ground there. Again, abandoned. I don't think that we've been to this one before. I think this is unique. The chat's still not showing on my phone. It's typical, isn't it? It'd have been so much easier. Ooh, that's nice. I like that. Okay, cool. Thanks, Swanky. Have a good one. Catch you later. Yeah, hopefully we can get enough of these to put the story together in a second. Aha. What else do we have here? There's a certain spooky feel to a lot of these ruins as well, and this by no means the most sort of spooky, but there's a little bit of that going on. I think this one looks like it's supposed to be producing the mycoid more than anything else. There's other ones obviously where they held like Thargoid subjects and experimented on them, which is obviously pretty unethical. I don't have got enough of the uplinks to actually... Yeah. Let's check. Yeah, I think that's most of them, isn't it? We just do part 6, but let's start playing it anyway.
They told me not to ask where it came from. Just to reverse engineer whatever I can. Weapons, shields, power management. Anything I can figure out. It's like giving a rocket to a Neanderthal and expecting them to fix it. I mean, where do I even start? At least they're paying me well. That's something.
Could you hear that okay? See you later, Trillic. Have a good one. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because it's a bit quiet in the surrounding sounds. I just was double checking. Awesome, awesome. Right, let's play the next bit of the story.
I haven't slept for days. I always did find it hard to switch off, you know? Even when I wasn't trying to reverse engineer an alien starship. I've made a small amount of progress, but it's always 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. The guys in charge are getting impatient, but what did they expect? It's not like this thing came with a manual.
Imagine that, we're trying to reverse engineer alien technology. A bit of a mindfuck to say the least.
I finally made some progress with the drive technology, which is just as well, since I was running out of options. Thargoid drive tech differs radically from our own. Rather than shift space around the ship, it appears to create this stable wormhole for the ship to travel through. It sounds crazy, but the maths don't lie. And if my calculations are right, I might even be able to replicate it. I want to get a prototype up and running as soon as possible. Something tells me the bigwigs are about to step in. I've seen this all before. You get hired by a big company, and once you've gone and done the hard work, they swoop in and take all the glory. Well, I'm not going to let that happen. I want to be credited with creating the first hybrid drive. I knew it. The minute I handed in my report, the company took over. They've retained me as a consultant, whatever that means. But they're basically ignoring everything I say. They've made some modifications to my prototype, but it was a bit of a rush job. Must be in a hell of a hurry to get to the test flight stage. I told them it was too soon, that we needed more tests. But once again, I got stonewalled. Granted, the wormhole is stable. But we have no idea what will happen when you send a human being through it. So, they decided to push ahead with the test flight, despite my warnings. Some hotshot young pilot full of spit and vinegar, as my old man would say. And not a single brain cell between his ears. The wormhole was stable, but that was never a concern. The question is, what will happen to the pilot?
Just to find the last piece of the puzzle, I suppose. But the story arc is one familiar to many of you, no doubt, about that theory that the latest generation of human FSDs, jump drives, is basically a hybrid of human and Thargoid technology. Which one of these I haven't uploaded? Okay. Pretty sure I have uploaded this one, but I will try it anyway. See what the final piece of the story is. Yeah. Scan that one, I'm pretty sure. Oh, cool. Here we go. Last log.
The ship didn't reappear for almost an hour. When it did, it just drifted, lifelessly. The pilot didn't respond to our hails. We recovered the vessel and pulled open the cockpit. What I saw in there will stay with me for the rest of my life. The pilot looked like he'd been turned inside out. That cocky young kid who thought he ruled the sky. I have to say, my sympathy didn't last long when I found out they're gonna pin it on me. They've cancelled the project and launched an investigation. That's just window dressing. There's no doubt in my mind they'll carry on testing in secret. Meanwhile, I'm the one who's gonna take the fall. There is a chance I might be able to make it out of this. Apparently, they've developed some kind of Thargoid killing super weapon. And they don't want so much as a whisper in the public domain. So, this is the choice I'm gonna give them. Let me walk, and I say nothing. Set me up, and everyone discovers that the INRA is in the genocide business. It's a risky move. But what other choice do I have?
Okay, what's the bet that she was probably shot about 5 minutes after making that log? Yeah. Yeah, every version of the INRA base is almost slightly different, each on its own sort of storyline. And I like that sort of attention to details. Obviously, it's like written there as well, but the voice acting makes it seem so much more real, as that sort of real personal human touch to it. Obviously, there's a very similar thing with certain space stations and especially generation ships as well. There's a lot of those where you can download logs from them. I mean, most of the generation ships, multi-generation spacecraft, ended up in just these horrible calamities, disasters where they were like all killed by plague, internal revolution, people going mad and seizing control, and then like literally opening the airlock to all their deaths, all kinds of really, really grim things. But it is very dramatic, and yeah, so the voice actors that they hired to do this are really, really good. Two seconds freezing is not that bad though, as long as it isn't like 2 minutes. that's alright. That's not so bad. Okay, cool. Are there any particular places that anyone would like me to go as a request? Because I am open at the moment. Whether that be sort of other sort of spooky locations, the canyons of Pomesh, or pretty much anywhere really, within reason, within the bubble. That's an interesting sound, isn't it? It's very cool. Bear with me one moment. Yeah, this is this is not necessarily the best of the old INRA bases, but it's definitely a pretty interesting one. Okay. Actually, if I can get Commander Trillick into the instance, I will do so. I will invite him in, and I think he's quite nearby. Yeah. Turn on my beacon might be a wise move. So get with the beacon controls and on the SRV. In a different place of this ship, isn't it? I'll return to the ship anyway. It's just easier that way. Okay, I'll invite you to wing. I will return to the ship just so that we can get Trillick moving back in. Okay, here we go. I think fingers crossed come the alpha update. It will be you can get back into the ship this way. Oh, that was it. I forgot how to enable wing beacon on the SRV. Now I've remembered. So no, you can go back on the ship. Cool. So Philip should be joining us in this instance. Here he comes now. Awesome. So it's more fun if you can get other people involved. There he is. In his Imperial Courier. You putting on an air show then, Mr. Trim? Awesome. Yeah, I think he may be coming in to land the other side of the base. Oh, cool. Here we are. Here he is. I landed on top. And now I'm probably going to fall off the other side. Yeah, I'm right on top of a ship now. Such is the fun of the elite. I hope we can do a lot more in spacesuits than we can, obviously, in SRVs. Like land on smaller areas. Now I've landed on my side. Ah, dear. I've got myself stuck. Ah, thank you. I think some of these bases can be quite a good racetracks as well. I mean, they've done that on a couple of occasions too. You know, go around the perimeter or you find a sort of circuit, be among the ruins. Turn somewhere quite sad to somewhere quite happy. Ooh, some more random nonsense. It's not nonsense, but yeah, the lights are quite blinding sometimes in these, which is realistic. Ah, that's cool. Ah. Okay. Are you saying like your local internet's probably slow or something, Chariot, or just like a relay? Because I know you're in North America, aren't you? We try to land on other people or other things. It's not always possible, but sometimes it is. The SRV at least is fairly disposable. Well, unless you're like millions of sort of thousands of light years from nowhere and you only got one left, that's a bit of a problem. But most of the time these days, that's not really that much of a problem with all the DSSA carriers. Yeah, I can see you typing in the game. Yeah. I wonder what the lag actually seems to be different for different people. The stream lag, I mean. Aha! Yay. The distortion that I saw in the game, for a moment I thought, is this one of these sort of Thargoid things? There's a bit of Thargoid technology is in the air, but it wasn't. I think it was just the exhaust of the SRV at very close range. Well simulated, that's the case. Communication with a little tank. Oh, little lag, sorry, yeah. Yeah. In-game seems to be fine, it's just the stream relay seems to be a bit slow for you guys. I mean, that's often the way between continents, seems to be more of a lag than obviously within the same continent. That's usually the way anyway, isn't it? I think that's why on the bigger expeditions or bigger events you end up having like a sort of North America, Europe, sort of East Asia, Pacific sort of meetups on those, just because it's much easier to get those people to instance with each other. That's interesting. There's about a minute delay from when I talk to you receiving it. Okay. That's way longer than it has been recently when I've done some tests. Ideally, I'd like it obviously be as close to real time as possible, but that's quite a long lag. Anything more than about, I don't know, 10 or 15 seconds is kind of excruciatingly long, really. Yeah, that's annoying. So the stream's not bad quality, it's just a delay. I wonder how much of that is actually just the internet infrastructure, how much of it is like the Twitch infrastructure? Because I mean, it's been said loads of times that obviously since the world started locking down that more people are just on Twitch or just on the internet. I mean, here in Europe it's quite late at night, so there's probably fewer people on. In North America there's going to be a lot of people on at the moment, so that would make a lot of sense. That's annoying, it really is. I mean, okay, I suppose for people watching it, let's say if you're like not in game at all and you're just watching the stream, it's not so bad because you're just seeing an event as close to real time as you can, so it doesn't matter as much. But obviously, let's say you're at an event, you're in game and you're sort of watching the stream for a queue, because sometimes that does happen. I've done it myself. And you don't want a minute's delay, you know. Whether it's like a landing or a race or whatever, you don't want 1 minute delay. I think the sad part is not much that can be done about that, because most of my settings are already on not minimal but like fairly sort of optimized for frame rate and like ease of communication. So there's not much I can really do to make it any better. But then again, we've all said, like, you know, we're the best will in the world. Even we've got like the best possible machinery. If the internet connections between you and the person who's seeing it aren't that great, you know, it's going to be slow anyway, or it's going to be a huge lag. Yeah. Damn it. Oh well, best to crack on though. Not much we can really do about that. I suspect, yeah, for people in Europe it might not be as much, because obviously there's just less of a distance it has to travel, and fewer networks it has to go through. And it's still not good. Yeah, let's keep on anyway. I'd love if a car actually had this, you know, a little sort of rocket beneath it, so that you could thrust up and down and just jump over traffic. And do this. No more traffic jams, no more being stuck. Didn't actually mean to crash into you that time. See how high I can go without... Yeah, only at 12 meters in the air. It's quite a low G world anyway. It's still not got much mass. Yeah, it's about 0.18 G, I think. It's not ridiculously low, but it's low by general standards. Then again, have you noticed the larger worlds are often quite flat and sort of relatively dull places because of it? And it's often the lower G worlds that have these amazing sort of topography, the canyons, the mountains. Or the high G ones are just flat and boring as hell. For those of you who've not been on expeditions, there's a lot of this SRV sort of silliness. Probably much more extreme than we're doing, actually. People shooting each other on a regular basis. And pistols at dawn. Baguettes at dawn. Yeah, if you want to ever go canyon jumping, you always have to sort of go front forks first, because for some reason that's really strong, and as I said earlier, it won't destroy itself so easily. For some reason. Yeah. That's also a fun event. Canyon jumping. Yeah, there's no real mountain around here to climb over. I think we want like a hill or something. It's nice. It's definitely nice. I'm just going to check some of the local internet stats just to see what transmission is, if I can do anything about it at all. I doubt if I can, but you never know. It's always worth a look. Just using speed check to see where I can get it from it, if anything. Yeah. It's not abysmal. The upload speed is obviously the key one for this. It's actually reasonable. So, almost certainly all the connections between here and North America. Nice. Should do some more racing in the future. I think that would be fun. Have some SRV races or canyon races in the bubble. I do miss doing those. Yeah, the upload speed's adequate. It's It's definitely an internet working problem. Which is a pain. So we can use the scenery to do. Is that a ramp over there that I'm going to use? See if we can launch ourselves off the ramp. Still sparking after all these years. The base. Haha. Surprised that's how he didn't destroy herself by doing that. Just crashes straight into the pylon. Doesn't really even take off properly, just sort of goes straight up a little bit, then hits the overhang. The base started just flashing lights at us. Does that mean we're unwanted now? We being naughty boys and girls? I don't know. It started flashing, definitely. Yeah, maybe we should just shoot it. If in doubt, shoot first and ask questions. Nothing happens. And I'm not surprised. I don't know if there are any barrels around here we can shoot. Not very combustible, the scenery. Cool. Yeah, see if I can find one of the other INRA bases for next time. That might be fun. Yeah. Just looking at my phone to see what the stream's doing now, and it's definitely a lag. And obviously this is literally in like Europe as well, in the same room. So, yeah. I'm going to say the one that I've just seen, it's a lag of about 15 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds maybe. So that's interesting. So there is still a lag, even in Europe. Just not as much. 10 to 15 is not appalling. It's not great, but it's sort of within acceptable limits. Okay, I'm just talking more from an event perspective here, because that's what I do a lot. Okay, let's have a look where we can go for another location. Let's do that then. Yeah, let's find I will pick another. I will pick another location. Probably from the same list of these old bases. Not necessarily the INRA ones. There's some interesting stuff generally, but INRA bases are one of them. It doesn't have to necessarily be that. It can be something else. Yeah, let's look in the list of sort of interesting places to see sort of within the bubble. And there's plenty of them. That's the thing, it was almost sport for choice really, hence why I'm having to look it up. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of ruins around. The old ruins of the bubble. Some Guardian ruins somewhere, but they're usually outside the bubble, I suppose, and it's interesting enough. Presently I'm looking through EDDB. What would be an interesting one? Control installation, comms installation. Surface one, no doubt, because, yeah, go for planetary, go for somewhere near Sol. Yeah, settlement type doesn't really matter. Let's say, for argument's sake, an abandoned one somewhere near Sol. Yeah, that'll do. Just as long as it's interesting. Cool. So, there's Ellis's Asylum. Low security mostly. Actually, there's more of these than I remember. What's 1, 4, 5? Yeah, these look interesting. Abandoned settlements of the bubble. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of choice. And there's always Dow's Hope is another obvious one, I will say. Thargoid attack sites. Those are interesting. That's a good one, actually. Yeah, Thargoid attack site sounds cool. Actually find some examples of those. See if I can find one of these. Okay. Right, I think I may have one. Looking for an old penal colony. The Thargoids hit years ago. Actually, I'm not sure how long ago this was. I must admit, I'm not a Thargoid expert. The game's not responding. This is weird. Yeah, the game's not responding that well at the moment. For some reason it won't take me into Galactic View. That is odd. And not into the menu. Wait a second. That's a bit better. So it is responding. Okay. Sorry about the delay, folks. The game is being very weird. It won't bring up a system map or a galactic map, and I kind of need those to navigate. Oh, this is very strange. Yeah, the galaxy map thing's a bit weird. I don't know why, because I can play the game perfectly well otherwise. The menu responds. I don't think it's anything to do with the instance, though, to be fair. I'll try again and see what happens. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a little technical difficulty. And not the usual kind either. Makes it even stranger. Well, thank you for everyone who's been watching so far. I'm just happy that anyone's watching at all. Especially now with the damn thing's not even responding much. I may try and log in and out if it doesn't get any better. So we shall see. Oh dear. Is everyone still okay in the chat? Is everything coming across okay? Because we do seem to have had some lags in the stream. Yeah, I think I'm going to relog actually. Yeah. I'll relog Trillic and wing him back in again. Okay, I'm going to log back to the main menu and see if I can get any joy that way. It's mildly embarrassing, but what else can I do? Look at that paint job. Huh. It's worn away really badly. I haven't been doing anything, I've just been flying around the bubble a little bit. Recently, anyway. Okay, and we're back. Oh, the game's back anyway. So, let's have a look to see what other lovely things that we can find. There is always like the Jameson crash site, that's always an interesting one. The conflict sites are too far away. There's always a place like Dav's Hope as well. Abandoned exploration camps. The former INRA sites are too far away also. Yeah, there's still plenty of places we can go there. Oh yeah, there's Hollis Gateway, the Hermitage. I've forgotten about that. I think that might be a good place to go. Or there's Clatt Enterprises and Alnath. Actually, I think we should go there. That sounds the best move. I remember that being pretty cool. Okay. How's everyone doing out there? Orion? Oh dear. This is not behaving well. Ah, now it's gone. Okay. I'm going to board the ship, and we're going to go to Alma, which is another abandoned place, but it's cool. Always the way on low G words. Slide in the back like there's no tomorrow. Here we go. Let's take off and get to orbit first. Let's get us into deep space. Okay, here we go. Yes, a very similar, well, similar in some ways, but very different in its own way. The settlement in Alnath. I think I've actually done a racing event here once before. It's such fun. So it's A2AA. Lots of A's there. A2AA. Awesome. It's not on these maps, but we'll just go there anyway. Cool. Bring in Mr. Chariot. From wherever he may be. Going to Right, and here we come. Yeah, I'll read you the description of the place. Begin by Canon Research. Right, it's the place is called Clatt Enterprises. The occasional facilities found Chariot Retreat, nearby settlement, I think, operated by INRA. It doesn't have much detail with that one, oddly enough. I suppose not all of them do, that's the thing. Some of them are just, you really have to go there to see them. Yeah, just looking at the monitor for the stream. European one isn't too far behind by the looks of it. Maybe about 10 seconds behind. Well, that's better than a kick in the teeth, isn't it? Yeah, thank you whoever's still watching for bearing with us. In spite of whatever technical difficulties we may be having. Then again, how many streams have I ever seen with lots of technical difficulties? Quite a lot. Yeah, that's true. It's not uncommon. Not uncommon at all. Just got to keep going no matter what happens. But always within a leap there's something of interest to be found, no matter where you go. Even seemingly dull places usually have their charms somewhere. Mostly even like seemingly sort of barren worlds often have, you know, things like, you know, biological or geological features, volcanic action. Fermiols and sort of various vents and what have you. The bark mound's always quite interesting because obviously on an air as well, thinking about it, it's obviously some kind of primitive life form, or is it some kind of chemical structure? Especially some kind of life, isn't it? Not of a typical sort of life that we would know on a carbon-based type on Earth or a Earth-like world. No worries, Trinnick. No worries at all. Yeah, a little bit of super cruise to get to this place. But yeah, it's always one of the things that great in this game is the beauty of the galaxy. I mean, the ships are cool, no doubt about that, and the SRVs are fun to drive, and they are all part of the greater experience. But I think the thing that keeps people coming back is, well, two things really: the sheer beauty of the galaxy and the community itself. The community being arguably the sort of the most positive and sort of helpful and genuine one that I've ever encountered, and I think a lot of people would certainly agree with that. Talking about beauty, to the right hand side you see the omnipresent sight from anywhere near the bubble or in it, the red eye of the Orion complex, Barnard's Loop, out the top of the screen, centre. The Orion Nebula sort of in that same vicinity, so it's the Orion complex. But that's always a sign that when you've returned to the bubble or near the bubble from being away on these really deep space explorations, that you know that you're near the bubble in human space when you see Barnard's Loop slowly come into view. Yeah, I think I remember this location as being particularly dramatic. Obviously, depending on the rotation of the planet, but the gas giant being very nearby definitely adds to that. As you can see, it's the planet we're heading to, well, technically a moon we're heading to, is in orbit of that gas giant. And it's a beauty. Yeah, I think you were saying in the chat, the community is, I think, one of the main things that keeps bringing people back, and even people who've been away for a little while. They'll often say the same thing. It's definitely one of the biggest pluses in this game, and I mean, I love this game anyway, these kind of space games, but it's one of the reasons I've sort of kept going for as long as I have. Geological signals, and that's our target. Clatt Enterprises. There's the other side of the body. That's fine. Just have to fly there. Yeah, it's ETAA. So always the thing with these, you're trying to make the glide isn't too steep that it stops, reports the run, but it's also you get as short a glide as possible. I'm trying to work the optimum, depending on the gravity of the world as well, so this is pretty good. This is fine. I don't know why it's just done that. I just accidentally pressed it. Ah, damn. According to this, Tridic's already here, but only his wing signal. Interesting. Oh, he'll appear, no doubt. Just give it time. Yeah, I mean, multiple player instancing in this game is not always the easiest. There's 2 ships and shooting really straightforward, or even to 4 ships. Anything more than that, it's a bit of a lottery, really. I mean, you could have 50 ships in an instance and be completely fine, but on a planet that's quite hard to do because of the peer-to-peer nature of it. If it was server-based, it'd be much more straightforward, but sadly, that's not the case. Actually, I'm going to turn the night vision to see what it looks like by itself. Ah, it's complete pitch black. Yeah, it's always the question of how much and in what way these places will change come the Odyssey update, because every landable body is going to be reshaped in some way, according to Frontier themselves. So it's kind of intriguing, but hopefully change for the better. We won't know for that for a fact until we've seen all these different places. I mean, some locations may be kind of radically remodeled, some may not change much at all, but we just won't know that until it happens. It makes sense to iron out any problems with streams right now here before the alpha drops. Make life so much easier. Okay, cool. See, Mr. Trilliums. Ah, he's nearby. Okay, I think I'm going to take about a 5-minute break, but I will be back shortly. Okay, cool. What I will do is I'll go for break for 5 minutes and I'll see you all shortly. And we're back in the room. Cool. Right, here we are at Clatt Enterprises. One of these further abandoned settlements. Abandoned places are always kind of intriguing. In the game and in real life. I mean, obviously a lot of people, you know, make a hobby out of basically going to abandoned places, and yeah, I mean, I can see the interest. I mean, not just sort of historical sites, but like abandoned, like industrial places, and because they all have their own history to them. I always tend to put the cargo scoop out on these things just in case there's anything interesting lying around, you know, materials of some kind that can be, you never know when they might be useful. Signals detected. 55, that's quite a lot actually. For anybody, that's quite a lot. Yeah. The settlement is quite nearby, I think. We're in the centre of the settlement. Back of his crew. Awesome. Yeah, this is the thing at the crew. It is a very fast little ship, and it is big enough to have you know, a reasonable SRV sort of bay in it. But yeah, it's still fast enough to be really mobile. I'm going to proceed up this ramp. Yeah, this is obviously a very sort of different character to it than the previous INRA base that we've seen. More upscale, more sophisticated. Looks like more of a permanent facility as well. It doesn't look like a sort of temporarily, hastily erected series of buildings and facilities. Now this is, I think I was alluding to earlier, this looks like one of the areas that a Thargoid being would have been experimented upon. With these sort of stains from the mycoid agent and the cranes up there. That seems a plausible theory anyway. These sort of remains here. Because of the remains of one of the poor creatures, effectively pretty much tortured to death by the processes. Let's have a look at what secrets this place will yield. I'll delete all the other ones in the other place because I've seen those already. Okay, that's 5 of 5. We'll continue onwards. This place, I mean, it's maybe not as quite as overtly creepy as the previous one, but yeah, that bit they torture the Thargoids is pretty nice. It's a bigger complex as well. See the INRA logo. merger of the logos of the Federation and the Empire. Okay, more comms. Goodness. Another one discovered. See what this one has to say for itself. There's a couple more to get. There's 5, isn't there? Yes. Just one more. Yes, there's still similar signs of the other one being hastily abandoned. It looked like there's probably a lot more people, a lot more activity, or industry going on here. Sparking. Because it just happened seemingly out of nowhere. Makes it somehow more abrupt, more interesting. Yeah, I'm not too bothered about that. Maybe I will later. I see some equipment. I will salvage it, but it's not my main aim at the moment. Boxes I can't actually open, which is unfortunate. But that's the way it is. Yeah, I was meant to sort of guess what these places were supposed to be. I know not every element is covered in the lore of the game, but yeah, the imagination sort of fill in the blanks. There's obviously a certain amount of the lore given us. I don't think it's the biggest INRA base in the game. I think it probably is. It's definitely on a large scale. Yeah, I definitely have actually organised a reunion meetup for one of the expeditions. I think it may have been, was it for Minerva Centaurus or Lightning Strike? One of those two. But we think we met up here because it was an interesting place and it was like made into a little racetrack as well. It's kind of fun. Not an obvious place to do that, but because you've got lots of, fixed places, you can navigate to it. That was pretty cool. Yeah, let's see clues you can find to these places were. This looks relatively untouched. Obviously the vacuum doesn't tend to decay things as much. But then again the solar wind does, so more damaging than people realise. I think that's been mentioned in the past that, for example, like photographs left of loved ones on the moon by astronauts have all probably been bleached by the solar wind by now. They're not actually necessarily as permanent as you would think. If it was just purely the vacuum, then yeah, it probably would be like that forever, but the bombardment, and not just the solar wind, but also like small meteorites, not like large sort of bits of rock, just even like small particles hitting it. Like, let's say you had like dust basically coming in at high velocity can scour things pretty badly. Because meteorites do break up and there is dust in space. It does fall onto to planets, yeah. Greetings to anyone still here. Hopefully you're with me in our little tour of these mad places. I think that may be the last one. Let's have a look what secrets they reveal.
Finally, we have a breakthrough. A researcher at the facility in the Hermitage 4A system has found something, stumbled onto something by all accounts, and it's pushed our research forward dramatically. Essentially, it's a kind of fungus, one that appears to have a significant effect on Thargoid technology. We knew their tech was partly biological, but until now we couldn't find a way to use that fact to our advantage. The theory is that if we could somehow get the fungus into their starships, specifically their hyperdrives, we could shut them down. They'd be unable to leave their system. We could end the war in a single stroke.
Yes, indeed.
We have built a dedicated new laboratory so we can properly test the effects of the mycoid. We also have access to an intact Thargoid ship and a living specimen. I plan to test the mycoid on both. Some of my colleagues have expressed reservations about experimenting on a living creature, but I have no such qualms. We must know what the mycoid can do.
Continue.
Excellent news. We have received a second specimen. We can now accelerate the pace of our testing. So far, our experiments indicate that the fungus affects not only the Thargoids' technology, but also their physiology, as evidenced by the degeneration of our specimen. These results are highly encouraging. If the mycoid can hurt them, truly hurt them, we may have found the means to win this war. Several of my colleagues have left the project in protest over our treatment of the creature. If it were up to me, I would have them executed as traitors. Our latest tests were extremely successful. The mycoid can paralyze a Thargoid system, either physical or technological, in a matter of seconds. It is extremely effective. I confess, the knowledge that the mycoid causes the Thargoids physical pain brings me some measure of satisfaction. But when one has seen firsthand the effect of their weapons, seen the destruction, the chaos, the bodies, can one be blamed for wanting them to suffer as we have? The hauliers have departed for the HIP 593821B system with the samples. ready to start mass production. We know the mycoid works. Now it falls to other members of the project to determine how it can be effectively deployed. I know there are some who will condemn me for my part in this project. Let them. I harbor no remorse. The Thargoids understand only one thing: destruction. They will not stop until every last one of us has been reduced to dust. We have created a weapon that can prevent such a catastrophe. We have a moral obligation to use it.
Yeah, much more dramatic even than the previous site. Yeah, that's it. It was a testing facility for the mycoid, which was then deployed not long after that. That's obviously why you go to the abandoned Thargoid bases, and then you see the scavenger drones sort of healing or attempting to heal their equipment, and the base itself with these sort of yellowy patches, which are basically the mycoid, I think. If you've never been to one, it's a fascinating place to visit, which I'll no doubt go to in the near future in one of these streams. But it's a technology, obviously, that the whole thing looks very alien, and it is, and it's fascinating because there's a wonderful sort of central chamber with this amazing galactic map. Or at least you assume that's what it is, because it looks like the galaxy, but in what kind of orientation, it's not obvious when quite what they were looking for. Obviously Thargoid physiology is quite different from that of humans, so their perception is probably different. Obviously this tech is designed for their perception of senses rather than ours, so it's bound to be different. And this is the thing about in real life, about alien life, if we ever encounter it in our lifetimes, it's likely to be so very different from us. It will be difficult to communicate or to really understand, because the difference in perception may be quite extensive. I mean, you never know, it might not be, but you know, how alien is alien. We have no frame of reference, we have no means of comparison. And even other species on our own planet that we think may be intelligent, like dolphins and whales, we're not really sure if they are, and if they are, what kind of, you know, how do we communicate with them? Is it possible? But even they have a different perception, assuming that they are intelligent for the moment, which is entirely possible. It's their mentality is obviously not our own, and that's just in the same planet, you know. A species that's growing up in a completely different ecosystem, geography. He has a completely different culture. Hello, Commander Trillick, yay! He has appeared. That's awesome. Oh, it isn't actually, sorry, it's just this ship. I thought it was SRV for a second. Parked a lot closer to the base than I anticipated. I thought he was on his way for a second. No worries, no worries. Let's see what else I can find. Some kind of wave bridge though, I'm not really sure. Obviously there's some things here that's supposed to just look technical, they don't really have a purpose other than stuff like looking cool, you know, just looking interesting maybe. Obviously there's some things that are supposed to lead you to believe that they have a function of some kind. I think we're back to where the cranes and the Thargoid subject would have been. And you can see our tracks here, we've just crossed our own tracks here. So we're definitely coming back to where we were. Yeah, it's interesting, the story of the Federation and the Empire really being able to be on the same page because of an external threat to them both. But then again, in human history, that's happened a fair few times. You know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They put together some very unlikely bedfellows over the years. I mean, the most obvious one in the last 100 years is no doubt the USSR and the United States. And arguably the UK and France and other sorts of Western powers. All with the mutual enemy of the Third Reich. So, I mean, that's a pretty diverse bunch, to say the least. Yeah, we're going back through the test facility, if you want to call it that. See what's over here. Going around the other side of base. Going around. See if I can pick up anything of interest. But yeah, I definitely recommend this place if you're interested in some kind of cool sort of planetary structure, because this is definitely one of the more sort of complicated ones that exist to date. You know, I'm sure with the coming Odyssey update we'll be seeing a lot more structures of different kinds, maybe even hopefully greater complexity on these sort of tenuous atmospheric worlds as they're referred to. Just looking out there for a second, see that sort of thin strand into the sky? I think that's actually the ring system of the gas giant. I'm just going to go to external camera to see what I can see. Yes. Yeah, I think that is that sort of strand that goes vertically from the cliff near the star. That does look very much like the ring edge on. I love the detail of this. I mean, the lens flare, and that's just remarkably good. And I know there are quite a few games that can do it now, but it's still great to see. The Magellanic Clouds, the clusters of stars outside our own galaxy that are sort of almost like little sub-galaxies that sort of orbit the Milky Way. They're not reachable within the game. I mean, the main galaxy is, of course, but they're sort of one of these places that are basically background fixtures because you can never really reach them. And who knows, maybe Frontier have plans that maybe one day we can reach the Magellanic Clouds. Here we have the dark, dust-laid features of the Milky Way. It's sort of brown at this angle, but there's, you know, it's the galaxy looks slightly different from different angles. Some places it's almost like a whitey sort of colour, some like a grey, some almost blue in places, but brown at this angle. If we look across the arms of the galaxy through all the local stars, and the silhouette of this particular INRA installation. And we carry on. Now, the obvious thing to say about these things would be that they would be Michael storage tanks, or ones that store the constituent parts of what made the microid. Certainly not being cleaned. All these INRA places seem to have been abandoned in a hurry. I suppose when the war ended, there was no reason for them to exist anymore. And the Federation and the Empire went back to doing what they always did. subtly or even blatantly undermining each other. But isn't that what happened also in real life? The US and the USSR fell out not long after World War II ended, and were enemies after that. Not the first time in human history it's happened. I doubt it will be the last. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing I think people are hoping will become more of a thing in future within the Elite Dangerous Galaxy universe, is more sort of narrative arcs, like well thought out narrative arcs, not just sort of very basic storytelling or sort of cat canyon storytelling. I mean, there've been some very good story arcs in Elite's history. There've been some that are sort of, not very well thought through at all. The Thorgoid ones aren't bad, I will say. I mean, I think one of the more intriguing stories was to do with the Formidine Rift mystery and the Project Dynasty and like the elites of certain galactic powers trying to like build a sort of system where they would evacuate themselves in these mega ships if an enemy, an unnamed enemy, was to overrun the bubble in human space, and they would restart humanity's civilization somewhere else deep into the galaxy. Obviously a lot of these were built, I think, in various places. Not massively far away from them, but like tens of light years though. And those were, because obviously that was like a series, some of this was obviously covered in Drew Rhaegar's books, famously, and Drew being, I think, the best of the Elite Dangerous book authors. I mean, obviously, like, one set in a game universe can sort of be very variable, but he did a really great job. I told him when I met him that I thought that his book stood up just as sci-fi novels in their own right, and it was almost like a bonus they happened to fit into the Elite universe so well. I mean, like myself, being a sort of, childhood fan of Elite, or the very elites, I should say. I mean, he's older than me, and he's one of these guys who was a kid when the first Elite came out back in the 80s. I wasn't, but my first sort of iteration of Elite I was in was the second one that came out in the 90s, but yeah, it's good to see people with enthusiasm like him actually making like a positive contribution to not just the lore but the community as well. So I met him at an Elite community event called FX17, which was run by Frontier Developments, funnily enough. It's the only one they've ever done like that, which it went really well. It's a shame they've never done anything like that since. Frontier, if you're listening, that would be a really good idea. Have your own sort of convention again, because it was fun. I think everyone enjoyed themselves. I think it actually brought all the kudos to Frontier, and it definitely helped bridge the community and the company, because there's obviously, if you get people to talk to each other, there's more chance they're always going to understand each other much better. So. Yeah, I just saw Trillic there on his SRV. But I've not been to LaveCon yet, the other major sort of UK, elite meetup, as it were. That's obviously run by the good people of Lave Radio. Shout out Lave Radio. I intend to at some point. It's just a matter of time, really, because it's one of those things. It does sell out pretty quickly. I think it's on this year, as far as I understand. Obviously, because of the pandemic, it was cancelled for 2020. But I think 2021 for this year. I think it's still on. Is in July. I have to correct myself on that, maybe, but that looks like fun. But yeah, no, FX17 was like a much bigger convention even than that, held in London. But yeah, I think we all thought the time it was going to be like the beginning of sort of new relationship between like the Frontier and the fans and just maybe the media at large, because that's why these conventions existed, but it ended up being a one-off. And I think that they used the occasion, obviously not just to talk about Elite and Elite updates, but to announce, I think, the Jurassic World game at that time, and like expansions to Planet Coaster and stuff like that. But yeah, Frontier still have a lot of other titles, including those around. So it would be nice to see it happen again, I think. Just crash into Trinity again. Yeah. I like these little ramps and things. They're always like designed for SRVs. Other than a way bridge, you can't see what else it's supposed to be, but you never know. Yeah, and then Tridic saying in game he can't wait to walk around this. Yeah, I feel exactly the same way, you know. I think most of us do. It's something that has been wanted in the game pretty much since its inception, and obviously it's taken a long time to get to this point, and it's somewhat behind Frontier's own schedule that they sort of declared back when the game first came out. I mean, I'd rather them get it right and take time than make it rushed and make a pig's ear of it. But it's nice with at least getting to that point now. Yeah. So many things that you'd be able to do on foot. Some of them very serious, some of them very comical. Because that's always the thing, there's always going to be sort of comic side effects and unintentional things that you can do. Can't wait to see what the community will make of this, because you will get people making all kinds of fun videos off the back of it, making new events that people have not had before, because all of a sudden you can walk around in a spacesuit and have I mean, we're just talking about on a sort of basic level, not even including weapons or anything. And the good thing is, for Explorer types, there is at least some exploration element of this. Like there's that scanner, or sampler I think it was, handheld one in Odyssey that you can use to analyze, I think, plants or crystals or whatever you find out in the galaxy. So that should be intriguing. I don't know if there's any others going to be on the specifically exploration-oriented things in Odyssey, but there's still got a lot to unveil, because obviously apparently the update won't come all at once anyway. It's going to come in little sort of bits at a time, little phases. At least that's what they've been saying so far. Apparently the alpha is going to be sort of released in sort of waves as well. Like, it's going on for 6 weeks. That's going to be probably like a sort of major change or a major sort of download every week then, I would have thought. Yeah, you're right, Tridic. Drew's writing is great, He's I'd recommend anyone who's never actually read his Elite books to do so. I've not read any of his other sci-fi novels. Apparently he's written quite a lot of other sci-fi novels, but his 2 Elite books are genuinely good. And they're very elegantly written, because they say they're good sci-fi, but they also fit the Elite universe very nicely. And I've enjoyed them, I really have, yeah. Okay. I think I'm probably going to wind down the stream in the near future, probably the next sort of 5 or 10 minutes. But it's been great, so, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, the absolutely the Drew Wagar books are I recommend. They're available in ebook form quite easily now. I don't think they're that expensive either. They're not long books, but they're sort of quite like a good length. As in, like it just keeps on sort of unfolding, very sort of very nicely. And it's very cool. Yeah, he's a very cool guy anyway, Drew Wagar. Yeah, he's like a sort of fan, but knows how to write very well, and those are always good. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is in the next 5 minutes I'll probably run the stream down, and I think I'll return to my ship now. We'll get back on our way to the base of Founders World. I haven't worked out an exact schedule yet, but I will definitely be doing more of these streams in the near future. I'll probably do at least sort of one minimum before the update actually drops next week. So obviously doing this, it's an art form in itself. I mean, I always knew that streaming wasn't necessarily as easy as it looked, and there are various challenges. But I'm just hoping, being a sort of pretty experienced events guy, having led so many of them, some of those sort of skills can be transferred over to this. It's all good fun. Thank you, Commander Trullick, for your company this evening in game. It's always nice to have that kind of interaction. That's what makes, on a bigger scale, that's what makes sort of all these elite events great fun. Whether you be races, mountain climbing, expedition meetups, there's so many things that are cool. But there's a great diversity amongst the elite community. Thank you to everyone who's followed me today, and everyone who's viewed this stream. Okay, as I leave the planet, this is probably a good time to say thank you and good night, and I will see you all at some point in the near future. Oh, there, look at the gas giant rise over the mountain. Fly safe and good night to you.